Hello, hello. Welcome to Dinero Twins episode number 18. Today we're going to be talking about the marriage business, where we're going to be sharing some really cool perspectives on the marriage industry, the wedding industry, the origin of marriage, the benefits of marriage, right? And so many more things to follow. So, hey, twin.
Hi, twin. Yes, this is a very, very interesting conversation. Of course, it lines up with our podcast theme, which is money and business conversations, because we're going to tie in all of the loose ends when it comes to, how expensive weddings are, how big the industry is, why people should look at both sides of the expense and the benefits. So this is going to be a really good conversation. I'm excited about it.
Awesome. And if you haven't already done so, please subscribe. Make sure that you do so, because we have a lot of great episodes like this coming up every single Wednesday. And also make sure you tune into our previous episodes as well, where you can make sure that you catch up with some of the really good gems that we've given out.
Absolutely. So, twin, I want you to talk to me about the history of weddings, because we had a little chat about it and I didn't even know these things.
Yes. So, I mean, super cool stuff. I mean, looking into this conversation and just like diving into it and doing some research, I discovered that where the origin of marriage actually came from, right? And I discovered that the first marriage ever that was documented in the history of the world, it dates back to like the 50s to 90s BCE. So we're talking about like before Christ, right? Now, this was actually, it goes back to the story of Antony and Cleopatra that later on became very popular through Shakespeare, and even, Hollywood came up with some movies that were influenced by the stories of both Antony and Cleopatra. But just to kind of give you guys a little backstory of who these people were, if you don't already know these people, Cleopatra was the ruler of Egypt, right? She was the queen of Egypt. And Antony considered himself to be a Greek god. Actually, what's so interesting about this, many of you know that I'm a big wine fanatic. So he considered himself to be a Diosene, I hope I'm saying that right, which is like the Greek god of wine, which gets into like the winemaking, all of that stuff. So that's what he considered himself to be. So these two people, when they married, we're talking about two of like the strongest and the most powerful empires in the world at that time. So when they got married, it was really to inherit in-laws, to join powers and to see ways that they can become more powerful together to be able to rule for more generations, right? Because in reality speaking, Cleopatra was the last monarch in her empire. So that means that if she didn't marry into wealth, she could have pretty much died out. Like the monarch could have died out, right? So when these two people saw that together, they can leverage each other's resources. Cleopatra wanted to expand to the Rome Empire. So, marrying Antony to her was kind of like money, like that's what was going through her mind. And then Antony wanted to expand into, Egypt and Iran and the Middle Eastern and all that stuff. So he saw that these two people, when they first sat down, it was literally twin like having a business meeting for them. Yeah. So to them, they were just talking about, okay, this is how I can help you. This is how you can help me. And then love comes later.
Right.
Literally, right? So it was a contract that they pretty much signed to like, we're going to get married. We're going to do this. We're going to make our aspirations and our goals come true together. But of course, they fell in love and all of that stuff. But I say all of this to say that the idea of marriage was really most of the history of the world. It was more of a business transaction. It was a way that people can join forces and kind of like, take advantage of the resources that someone else can give you so you can better your lifestyle, right? So the idea of marrying someone for love didn't really become a thing until like a few hundred years ago. Right. So now people are like, I'm in love with this person. I want to marry them. I want to spend the rest of my life with. But in reality, a lot of these people were thinking about money when they first thought about marriage.
That is
perspective.
Yeah, so interesting to me to, understand that origin because again, when you think of all the cultures, right? We're in the US, but if you think about, the Indian culture or even the Chinese culture, even in the
Mhm.
Caribbean back in the day, it was very like, who are you marrying? What do their family own? What do they have? And it was like an exchange, literally, like in those
Exactly.
small towns, like you can marry my daughter and then I'll give you 5 cows and then, we'll prosper together.
Exactly, exactly. So for the longest, right? I mean,
Yeah,
in India, you still see a lot of arranged marriage, right?
yeah,
Because it goes back to that, it's like an exchange. I'm giving you something in return of this, right? And then a lot of times it was to keep the wealth amongst the family or if not to multiply it. So it's just interesting that a lot of people, I know this can be a touchy subject to people because it's not like
yeah,
we're saying that you should only marry for money. Of course, you marry for your own reasons, and we're not taking that away from anybody, but it's just so you can understand the origin of marriage and where this whole contract, because it's really a
yeah,
contract
yeah,
among
exactly.
people, right? Where this whole concept came from, right? So it was originally a business transaction amongst two empires to become stronger and better together.
Yes, yes, yes. Great information. And then jumping to our Western culture, right,
Yes.
in the US. So, of course, typically getting married is between two people that are in love, they want to start a family, XYZ. But there's also a huge industry behind the wedding business. So,
Yeah, let's talk about
yeah, I want
that.
to touch a little bit about that because every year 2.7 million weddings occur in the US. Um, that
Wow.
was that was as of 2021. Of course, we had some slowdowns in 2020 because of the pandemic. A lot of weddings were canceled. A lot of venues couldn't, hold big functions. But it is estimated that for 2022, we will still be on track at about 2.6 million weddings for this year
Yes.
alone. This
Wow.
stat comes from the Knot. The Knot is like the biggest publication in the wedding industry. This is where everybody goes to for, where do I find my venue? Where do I find my photographer, my videographer, all that good stuff. Um,
Nice.
Guest count on average was 130 people per wedding. That dropped down to 110. So
Okay.
weddings are becoming a little bit more, personal. So as opposed to like, big lavish weddings of two, 300
Yes.
people. But still 100 people is a lot of people, right? I think.
I
um,
mean, it's interesting that you mentioned that, Twin, because I actually was reading a book. I don't remember the name of the book, but they were saying that um, on average, you would expect about 200 and like around 100 to 250 people at your wedding. It's kind of like the same amount of people that you would expect at your funeral. So it's so interesting that you mentioned those numbers. But the fact that it's declining, why do you think it's declining?
yeah, I think it's declining because a lot of the, upcoming generation that is getting married, they have more of an emphasis on more of a personal vibe, like a
Okay,
personal
more intimate.
situation. They're saying that micro weddings is what they're calling them are becoming more popular. So it's more of sentimental value as opposed to like getting married and then your parents inviting all of their friends and making it a big social spectacle.
Yes, interesting.
Yeah,
Okay. So we're
yeah,
breaking that norm of, we have to like have do it big, right? Do it big or go home pretty much. Oh, but now people are transitioning to more intimacy, right?
exactly.
Like I want this to matter because for many people, they only want to get married twice. They only want to get married once,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Absolutely. And it's expensive. So the average cost for a wedding is $22,000.
Wow.
That's as of 2021. And of course, that's including smaller weddings, dinners, and then the big ones where folks go
Okay.
out all out.
I don't know why I thought that number was going to be higher.
Yeah,
Okay.
same thing, same here. But I'm also thinking that they're counting, the small intimate ones, like the ones with just family dinners or maybe like a getaway into like a resort kind of thing.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, it's definitely a very, it could be a very expensive uh, part of life, right? So, I do encourage folks to definitely do their numbers beforehand for those of you looking to get married. The industry is huge. I mean, this we're getting right into the beginning of wedding season, which is why we're having this episode. It's like perfect
Yeah.
timing. So wedding season is any time between April and October. And from what I hear, venues are already fully booked for 2022. Everybody's in wedding mode.
And
Everybody's
2023, all booked. I'm about to get on the list. I mean, I don't have a wedding date, but I'm about to get on the list for 2024 because I feel like
yeah,
between now and then I might be engaged. Who knows? And I want to
yes,
make sure that I have a place that I can get married.
exactly. You want to plan way ahead.
Exactly.
That's so
But
funny.
let's talk about how big is the industry itself, Twin.
Yeah, so the industry is a 57.9 billion dollar industry. 57
57.9.
57.9, but that's including, everything that incorporates into a wedding. So that's videography, photography, wedding cakes, wedding dresses, wedding rings, right? Engagement rings, centerpieces, party favors, DJs, hair and makeup, flowers. Flowers is like a big expense.
Yes.
So when you add up all of those industries together that are part of, big weddings, it adds up to that much, which is crazy.
Wow. So I mean, if anybody watching this and you cater to, wedding planning or, if you're a makeup a makeup professional or stylist or whatever, I feel like these numbers, I mean, we're in the billions, we're in the,
Yep.
double digit billion. So that's a lot of opportunity for people to make their way, especially because, we just mentioned that the next 2 years, venues are completely booked. So that means there's a lot of weddings that are going to be taking place because they're trying to catch up for like the last 2 years where we pretty much were like a little restricted or limited on that aspect, right? So there's a lot of money in that money.
A
This
lot
in
of
the
money. Money, money,
oh,
money.
wow.
Yeah.
So
So talk to us about the benefits, Twain. We had a little conversation about the
yes.
benefits of marriage.
So of course, doing some research and like I mentioned earlier, diving into this, I realized that there is a lot of benefits into getting marriage compared to long-term partnership. And some of these benefits include more of like the benefits that you receive from like your spouse, from Social Security and things like that. So let me kind of just get into some points here that I have from my notes. Here we go. So marriage can be important for a couple of things. One, if we're looking at it in regards to a short-term financial benefits, marrying someone can help you, like I mentioned earlier, join resources. So if you're marrying someone who earns more than you definitely want to make sure that you keep in mind that after just 9 months of marriage, you're eligible to collect future widow or widower Social Security benefits, right? So
I didn't know that.
I know, me neither. I recently learned about. I'm like 9 months. That seems like so like short, right?
Short, right? Yeah.
But yeah, after 9 months, you are eligible to receive, future widow or widower Social Security benefits. So what that means is that if you're married to someone and your spouse passes away, after just 9 months of you guys being married, you can start collecting those benefits from Social Security. Okay.
Wow.
But of course, we don't necessarily always have to wait for that tragedy to happen, because after just 1 year of marriage, you and your spouse are eligible to collect future spousal benefits from Social Security as well. So, but I do want to put like a little disclaimer on this, because this only applies to spouses who earn more. I'm sorry, the benefits, you will only receive benefits if you earn less than your other spouse. Okay, so in a situation where, you guys have been married for a year, and let's say, you are in some type of financial needs, once Social Security starts kicking in, if you earn less than your spouse, then you will start to earn some of their Social Security benefits during Social Security.
Okay,
right? So a really, really good perspective. Now, another thing that I want to mention is that if you stay married for 10 years, you're eligible for divorce, spousal, and also divorce widow benefits. Okay, so this only applies if you're married for 10 years. So which means that if in the event that you guys do get divorced, you will be able to receive some benefits from Social Security long after you guys,
Wow.
the whole divorce, but at least have to be married for 10 years.
Okay.
Okay. Now I also want to get into some statistics that some people may not want to hear, especially if they're planning to get married. But I feel like we need to plan because
Yeah.
I mean, we live in a world where, you may be planning for a fairy tale wedding, but we have to be very realistic. We as humans change. We are always changing. We're always adapting. We're always evolving. So I think it's fair to say that we should also look at marriage, or go into a marriage knowing that there can be a possibility of a divorce. Okay, the numbers represent what I'm about to say now. Okay, so now it says get married. And by the way, I got these statistics from CNBC. There was a really great article. I'm actually gonna plug in the reference to it on the description.
Okay.
But it says get married, but always assume you'll get divorced. Why? Because 41% of all first marriages will end up in divorce or separation. Again, this is data that's coming back from Wilson and Ferkman, which is a really, really big data firm. We have 60% of second marriages that go south, and 73% of third marriages will end in divorce. So a lot of people, of course, you're thinking, I want to spend the rest of my life with someone, but you want to think about this is a possibility, right? And then that's not saying going into marriage thinking you're already going to get a divorce, but thinking about it that it is a possibility will help you guys plan accordingly, like having a prenup, right? And some people, again, you may have your own different beliefs when it comes to prenups. I feel like prenups can help both parties by protecting both parties from inheriting any debt from your other partner that you had nothing to, that you were not involved with, or just, I see it as a way to protect both parties, right? Protect inheritance, family inheritance, generational wealth that was passed on to you that you don't really want to split during a divorce and things like that. So it's just things to think about. And just giving you that perspective that a prenup isn't always like, oh, what's mine is mine, what's yours is yours. Like, I feel like there's certain things that you can protect, but I feel like if you help me get it out the mud, what's mine is yours, right? Like, I'm only interested, like, in my own personal opinion, I'm only going to be protecting what's mine, meaning like things that I inherited, or things that I build. But if we work together and build this partnership, I don't mind splitting things up in the event of a divorce, because I know that you helped me during that process, right? So
and that's what a prenup does essentially, is it protects what you own prior to that wedding date, right? And going forward, it's whatever you earn together is kind of half and half. So
half and half. And I think that's a fair I think that's fair, because again, not saying that I know a lot of people is getting into like these whole sayings that like, oh, if you sign up a divorce, you're pretty much, if you sign a prenup, you're already dooming, like, your marriage is already doomed. But that's not the case. Again, it just goes back to protecting both parties in this, because at the end of the day, like, the whole concept of marriage is really a business transaction. Yes, people are marrying for love. Everybody likes to think that way, but you want to think about what can happen, plan for it. That's what I'm trying to say. Just plan for it.
What I tell people is the way that the laws are written and the way that government sees you and the way the IRS sees you, it is a business. So a partnership that's in marriage status is it becomes a whole other situation. Like, it has a whole other
more, right? Taxes go
absolutely
when you're married. So it's things to think about, right, Twin? And I know you were going to get into that makes you think, like, it comes out to, like, the language of it is a business language, so get in tune with it.
Absolutely. Understand it and don't take it personal, and don't think that, you're planning for the worst. It's just preparation, really.
It's just preparation. That's all. Because divorce can be a very ugly thing. It can be very costly thing as well. So it's just like, if you have a prenup, it's just like, if it ever gets there, then at least we had planned for it. If it doesn't, then even better, you don't have to even worry about it.
For sure.
And I didn't even touch on alimony, Twin.
Tell me.
Alimony really applies to once you're divorced. So once you're divorced, in certain states, this doesn't apply to every state. There's certain states that favor alimony, some states don't. So for example, From my research, Massachusetts is one of those states that favor alimony. But then if you live in Texas, Texas is not like a big alimony state, so they're not probably going to enforce it as much as Massachusetts, right? But what is alimony? Alimony is just a financial support that a person is ordered by a court to give their spouse during a separation or divorce. Okay, again, this also applies to the person earns less than you. So if this spouse that the court ordered earns less than you, they can qualify for alimony. Okay, so that means that you will be, in other words, in charge of giving them this kind of like financial support during the divorce until they're able to pretty much prove that they're back on their feet and that they can provide for themselves.
Right,
So
right.
another business, right?
And again, it could be a really big burden for some people, right? So it's like, again, you need to understand it. You're going into a marriage, and if in the example of some men that are like, look, I don't want my wife to work, I want my wife to stay at home, and then that wife ends up giving up on their income, their career, and now things go south. Now she becomes that financial liability for that guy, even after divorce, like
Even
indefinitely.
So it's just things to think about, like, again, I'm not saying that people marry for money, but is one of those things that helps, right? Like if you're going to marry someone, you want to think about, well, what resources does this person have that can help me, have a better lifestyle, or vice versa, So, I mean, this is, again, the perspective that some people have when they do marry. And, but not saying that marriage is all about money. It's just, again, it's just things that you want to think about when you are going to make that partnership, that legal partnership, because that's what it is, that legal partnership with someone else.
Absolutely. Yes, yes. So I want to talk a little bit about smart planning when it comes to planning these weddings that we just spoke about, how expensive they are and how people get into debt to have these big lavish weddings. A quick stat. So you mentioned the 41% of the first time marriages end up in divorce, right? But also weddings are, the second term for weddings is, and I don't know if you've heard this before, is the 5-year financial burden. That's like a classification of what a wedding is, because the stats say that you can get married now, but for the next 5 years, you're going to be paying for that wedding if you're paying out of pocket, right? Because a lot of people, they take out loans, the male usually takes a loan for that engagement ring or puts it on their credit card for that engagement ring. Then you have personal loans, and you have, cash out of your savings account that you're using to plan the venue, to put deposits down and things like that. So it is technically a 5-year burden for those that, don't have that money set aside specifically for a wedding.
Wow. And especially if that money is not coming from like your in-laws, or not coming from your parents, right? Because I know in some cultures, like the in-laws or the parents will pay for the wedding, especially if it's the first wedding. But if that's not the case, especially in our community, my parents are not going to pay for my wedding.
Right.
Like that's something that I would have to plan for. So it's just something that you want to keep in mind. Like, how am I going to afford this wedding? Especially if you're a lot of, newlyweds, they end up buying a home, right? They upgrade their cars, they think about family. So it's like on top of all these other financial obligations that you may have, is the wedding, is going all out on a wedding really the best financial decision that you guys can make together?
Right, exactly. So I wanted to share a little bit about my personal story. So I'm on my second marriage. Obviously, I was divorced once before, so I'm part of that statistic. But, in my 20s, I used to go to a lot of weddings. Friends were getting married. I got married. My first marriage was at 25. And the last time I decided to go to someone's big, lavish wedding was because I found myself as a guest spending so much money to travel. I went to a wedding in Orlando from New York.
Okay.
And, I bought my flights, I bought my dress, I paid for the hotel, I brought the gift, right? A cash gift.
Yes.
And I remember thinking to myself, like, I just spent like $1,200 to be here at this wedding for the weekend. And back then, it doesn't sound like a lot of money now, but back then it was, especially because I was working really hard to get it. And that friend of mine ended up getting divorced 9 months later. And I felt so bad about A, of course, the divorce, but B, that I had just spent all this money. I bought this dress that was still sitting in my closet that I only
Wow.
wore one time.
Wow.
And from then I was like, you know what? Like when anytime, any other time that I get invited to a wedding that's not someone that's really close to me, like in my immediate circle, I'm just gonna make the decision to just send them a cash gift and keep it simple, because it became such an expense. So it's not always an expense for the people organizing the wedding, but it could be a big expense to the people that are attending weddings,
Yes,
right?
absolutely. Wow.
Especially with like what do you call it? Weddings that are done over the weekend, like resort weddings. I
Yes,
know
so
you were at one not too
getaway
long ago.
weddings. Yeah,
Getaway
getaway.
weddings.
Yes, I was in one of those not so long ago in November. My cousin got married, and but they live in Punta Cana, right? So, I went out, but to me it was like those are like family. So to me, it's like
Yeah,
I gotta be there for them. They've been together for like 12 years. So after 12 years, they're getting
yeah,
married, and it was just so beautiful to experience that. But yes, getaway weddings are costly because I'm traveling. A ticket to DR, especially during that time, is not cheap,
yeah,
right? We were staying at the resort. Luckily, they work at a resort, so we didn't really have to pay for that. But if not, we were easily going to be spending like 200 a night, probably even more. The gift, right? The dress. So all of these things go in that
yeah,
involve in that cost money,
yeah,
for the
yeah,
guests as well. It's just
yes.
like all of that.
Yeah. And since I always had that in mind about, I never wanted to like impose on my family, because I know what their financial situation is like, to want to come and spend money in my wedding. So the first time I got married, I just had a family dinner. It was like 35 people in a restaurant. We just hired rented like a floor of the restaurant. And, we kept it simple. We didn't spend more than like 5K, kept it very, economically to make sense.
Nice.
And then my second marriage, which I'm in now, hopefully, and it will be the last, I should say. Um,
Yes,
we made that decision as well. My husband and I were like, you know what, is this the right time to like have this big lavish thing? We got kids and we got like expenses and houses and all this other stuff that are more important for us to put our money into. So we
right.
also decided to not have like a big wedding. We just kept it very
Okay.
simple and did like a dinner with the parents, took our pictures, just kind of kept it very simple. And we don't have any regrets. Like we're like, sometimes we think about it and we're like, should we do something big coming up next year? And we're like, you know what? No, like we're good with the decision we made. So it really depends on, where you are and kind of what's important to you. And I know other people that are like, I do want to have my big wedding. I want my white dress and I want my party, and that's okay too. But I always tell folks, just keep in mind the financial responsibility that comes with it, and make sure that you don't set yourself back like a couple of years to
Yeah.
make it happen.
That's so interesting, Twin, for sharing that. I started thinking about there's people that say that you get married multiple times within, like you marry the same person multiple times because, for example, some people renew their vows after 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, right? Because you're marrying, they say that you're marrying an entirely new person because the same person that person was when you married, it's not the same person that they are 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So and a lot of people go all out for like the renewal of the vows and things like that. So
Yeah,
it's like if you think about it, you're marrying the same person. Of course, if you believe in those traditions, you're marrying the same person more than just one time. You're marrying them multiple times. So,
right.
so it's just an interesting perspective. Maybe that's something that you and your husband want to do instead of, because
Yeah,
you guys didn't go all out on your wedding, but you can do a renewal of the vows, and maybe that's something that you put a little bit more special emphasis on, right? So
right.
it's just a
Yeah,
great thing to think about. It's exciting, right? But there's
yeah,
also a lot of money in this business, in this industry, that gets involved with it. And besides all the benefits that you do get in being married, versus like a long-term partnership. So for those of you guys that are watching this episode, just know that, I'm pro-marriage. Twin is pro-marriage, so we believe in that you should do what you believe in, what you
yeah,
want to do, right? If you don't believe in marriage, hey, it's not everybody's cup of tea. We do know that the statistics have proven that not all marriage works, but hey, people want to give it a try. People like the idea of like, I mean, I feel like us women, like we would always dream about like this big fairy tale wedding or things like that, or like marrying the guy of your dreams, because all these princesses that we saw
Yeah.
growing up, it was kind of like programming you
Right.
that way, right?
The
I
Disney
look at it like,
programming.
yeah, I don't look at it like that right now, because it's like knowing what I know now and being financially educated, like I would much rather invest my money in other places like cash flowing assets, right? But of course, a lot of people think, well, you're only gonna get married once, right? So why
Yeah.
not go all out? Why not make it special? But do plan for the worst, right? Expect the best, but plan for the worst. And, make sure that you're protecting both parties. Do understand that at the end of the day, the laws are written for marriage to be a business, right? A contract amongst two people. So make sure that not only you're protected, but that you're protecting your spouse as well. All right. So if you haven't already done so, please subscribe. Make sure that you tune into more conversations like this, right? Especially now during wedding season, you want to make sure that you plan accordingly. Any last words, Twin?
Yeah, this was such a good conversation. So the marriage business, that's what it is, guys. Love is great, but you want to make sure that you understand all sides. And happy wedding.
Happy wedding, right? Live happily ever after.
Yes.
Awesome, guys. Well, thank you for joining in with us today. Until next time.
Until next time. Ciao.